Iron Shire Council Corporate Service Committee meeting on 15th November 2024. Declare this meeting open at 9 a.m. and we'll move in firstly to applications for attending by the General Manager.
No applications for video, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any apologies sought?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have an apology from Councillor Stoles who are unable to attend this morning, and as a result, that means that the meeting will have voting rights.
Do we have a mover? Choice, Councillor Fraser, second. Councillor Shields, all those in favour? And the ayes have it. We've got any disclosures of interest this morning, please, General Manager?
No disclosures.
Any public participation?
There's no public participation this morning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And everything else being equal, I think we'll move into the business items. Mr. Phelps, if you want to lead us off with your quarterly financial summary and investment reports, and listen in. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome all new fresh faces on the committee, so that's very pleasing to have. So first of all, we'll talk about the quarterly financial summary and investment report. As you see, the 6 recommendations there, we'll go down through this report. The first part of the recommendations is the financial information summary on the bottom of page 3. Year to date, to the end of the September quarter, we have a negative variance to budget of about $1.1 million. We'll go through the high level items of that.
Do I need to use this?
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question, what you mean by negative variance? In my experience, negative variance means we've overspent, but it appears we've underspent. Is that correct?
Effectively, we're over budget at this point in time. So we're actually overspent, if you can say it like that. But effectively, all our revenue streams are lower than what we anticipated. Now, a lot of that is purely just based on timing of when costs come in and out, because a lot of the books are actually on a cash type basis. But no, you're welcome to go and ask any questions as and why it has come through.
Probably, Mr. Chair, I want just to add to that, councils may also find it helpful to look at the budget projections. So Mr. Phelps, whilst reporting on overs and unders throughout the month, will also identify whether we need to adjust the budget for the forecast. In this instance, there's no adjustments, but I don't think for this month being proposed. So the overs and unders are considered to be still within the final overall year scheme. So it's just a monthly variation rather than yearly variation. So sometimes it helps to look at both components to get a feel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. And also, a lot of the reason why there's no notice about the very first quarter is we're waiting for the budget just to settle. So ultimately, we get some trends happening overall. And with a lot of the end of the year transactions that do go through and come through the mix, we wait for that budget to settle down, and then we look at future works programs and whether or not they're going to be delivered over the course of the next 9 months.
Isn't it somewhat? Let me put it this way: waiting for the budget to settle. I mean, I appreciate that you have a budget that runs from year to year, but at the end of the day, it's still a continuous process coming in from the previous year. Waiting for the budget to settle, wouldn't that seem? That to me seems a little unrealistic, given that it's just a continuation on from what's been going on since time immemorial in any case.
Pretty well, Councillor Fraser. What that means is that the timing of everything. So we're looking at the timing coming through, and then now we look at our major projects, which is the main driver behind the budget, which is at the end of the first 6 months, we'll know whether or not those major projects will be delivered or not. Operationally, that's more of a timing issue. So that's the reason why I'm saying that we're waiting for the budget to settle a little bit. And also to have a look at the grant funding, or whether or not we're going to obtain any more additional grant funding.
is there any virtue in looking at these figures on the basis of a year-on-year approach and saying what the same situation was 12 months ago, or is there a significant difference between the positions owing to the major projects and also potential inputs from grant funding?
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, with regards to a lot of our budgets, in year on year, you'll find that we have the same sort of trends and backouts of capital expenditure coming through, depending on whether or not we've had delays with workload with a lot of major projects, and also with a lot of the grant funding, whether or not we've actually applied for the grant funding that may not be obtained at this point in time. And once it's approved, then it'll come into the budget per se.
From your memory, and it may be unfair for me to ask this, but from your memory, was this similar, the situation we see at this stage of this year, was this a similar situation that we saw at the same time last year?
Pretty well every month when we look at it, we never go right on top of the budget. There's always ins and outs coming through, obviously with the movement of the revenue and expenditure. But predominantly, based on trends over the last probably 5 years, we have backed out a fair bit of our capital expenditure. We've tried to go, even though it's a major capital spend this year, we're probably hoping to hit at least that 90% mark of that $71 million that we have got on capital expenditure. But reality depicts that there's things go wrong during the year, obviously with delays in getting contractors or actually moving projects forward. That will require those to be backed out into next year. So you'll see a lot of those coming through in regards to that frame.
Does this variation of 1.1 million, would you characterise that as reasonably standard and therefore unforeseen?
Yeah. I would find that the spectacle is more of a timing factor coming through. And probably when we get to the 6-month frame, you have more or less a good overview then for the next 6 months, because any grant funding that we would have applied for in the past 3 months, we would have no contacts, and also then we'd actually know whether there's delays to projects coming forward, and whether or not we've had any unexpected expenditure coming through as well. So it's one of those ones that within council with such a large budget, there is unexpecteds that do crop up from time to time, which we have to fund ultimately overall. So we'll have to try and find savings within the budget to pay for those unexpecteds as and when they do arise. But at the moment, comfortable with the actual result as it stands, based on the fact that a lot of it is a bit of timing coming through. There's some costs in there that we need to review, as noted in some of the service reports. And those items are the ones where they're looking like they're going a little bit higher than when we anticipated in the budget. So we'll look at that, check it out, and just see exactly whether or not there's any unexpected costs in there, and whether or not there's misallocation of costs that have gone into that hole that should have gone into other areas, and adjust those accordingly.
I might jump the gun somewhat, but is it expected that where there are overruns, as noted in the operating revenue report and the summary that you provide, is it anticipated that where there are overruns, that those would be sought to recover from other areas?
Correct. Yeah. So overall, when you look at the holistic budget, you look at within the service area itself, ultimately to get some savings. But then ultimately, if that service area can't meet those savings, we have to find funds from other areas to match those off, so that we don't over the budget.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving down to the first items here, where we'll talk about the actual major contributors coming through. The very first one there, that's my favorite. That should have been in there. That was from last year. I was just more or less the revenue services. Revenue services is running okay at the moment. So we'll start at the early learning centre here. So its revenue is higher. So it's had some receipts of some additional grant funding coming through for the Start Strong program, which is a pre-school education program. So So that has been a benefit to the early learning centre. Family daycare as well, it's higher than budget by about 72K. More or less higher utilisation of the service. So there's a bit of an offsetter. Through that service, we have educators that pretty well perform the majority of that service. And you'll see on the other side of the expenditure about 70,000 up as well. General revenue is higher by about $200,000. It's pretty well come through as well. Sorry, it should be lower than budget by $200,000. It's lower because we've got financial assistance grants in advance from last year that were higher than what we anticipated. So when we draw down the budget, we have to take assumptions coming through. Right at the end of last year, we got a bit more in our financial assistance grants in advance. And also we've got a little bit extra in revenue from the rating income, which has been a bonus. White Park revenue was lower by 43. There's been lower than expected events down here at White Park, so we've only really achieved about half our revenue streams at this point in time. We do have a lot of we're programming a lot of events that will come through that will hopefully pick up its revenue streams, but it's something that we will closely monitor as we're coming through. Transport for New South Wales state road revenue, which is more or less along the Golden Highway. Its revenue stream is about 50,000 higher. That's just the initial works for the Golden Highway. Normally we bill those on a quarterly type basis, and receive them into October. So we've got a little bit in advance coming through. Local roads is higher by about 62. Again, we've had a little bit lower in our financial assistance grants, but it's been offset by a bit one-off grant that came through for the Sedgemoor Wombat crossing that happened down there near the public school. So that project's now been complete, so we received a little bit of extra funding for that. The sewer revenue is higher by about 47, it's just the annual access charges coming through, and also a bit of Section 64 contributions today. And the water supply is actually lower by 75,000, even though we've had an increase in our access charges. It's been offset by lower consumption coming through. So it's one of those ones where we can't determine how much water we actually are using coming in. Moving into our non-operating revenue and expenditure, it's down by about negative by about 288,000. 366 of it, which is the main contributor, is lower utilisation of the council fleet. Now, this is an item that we've been looking at for the last probably 3 to 6 months. And we're just going through looking at our full costings and our use of our fleet and whether or not we are over capitalised at this point in time. So we're going to continue that review coming through, and we can bring something back to the committee in regards to that.
I'd like to ask in relation to, I don't quite understand the concept of internal fleet hire. Could you just give me a quick explanation of what that actually means?
Yeah, definitely, Councillor Fraser, just through the chair. So we have a lot of heavy machinery that we have out and construct roads, do maintenance and so forth. We charge those fleet out to those works. So it's like getting a contractor in. We have a fleet management area where it's like a contracting arm. So we charge for the roads, our hire charges go into each of the roads and to capital works projects, so that we actually get a bit of grant funding attached to those as well. And it's to cover the cost of that depreciation on those and the running cost of our fleet coming through. So it's all our internals.
This is effectively accounting for the use of the heavy machinery of the fleet within projects performed by council. It's not finance on funds.
No. We do a private works outside for outside parties, like doing their driveways or with the actual entrance to their driveways, or we might create their access roads and so forth. So we do private works for that, but it's not a major component.
So this is effectively just accounting for the movement of money within the Upper Hunt Shire Council.
Yeah, it's paying for our fleet to actually do the works coming through. So the cost of actually the road maintenance, it effectively has the cost of our fleet to do that road maintenance.
Thank you.
Through the chair to the finance manager. I'm struggling with that red $288,000. Internal fleet hire costs are lower than budget by 366. Why then is that a negative variance? Because it seems to me that if we set a budget that was something higher than 366,000, and the costs were then lower, shouldn't that be a positive variance?
Now, through you, Mr. Chair, that's the revenue stream. So within internal fleet, that's revenue and expenditure. So that's overall. So the revenue side of our internal fleet was lower by 366, which is a negative. So your revenue streams are down. That's why.
Okay, so what you're saying is that we budgeted more than $366,000 worth of use of the fleet,
Correct.
and we didn't achieve that. Okay, right.
And that's why we need to have a look at our fleet and check the utilisations coming through to make sure that we're actually utilising our fleet to its full potential and regaining the cost of that fleet coming in.
Yeah, okay.
Moving into our operating expenditure, here we just highlighted a number of items. So our fleet management costs are actually lower by 100,000, obviously with our fleet revenue down, so that's a bit of an offsetter against it. So it's just lower plant maintenance required today. Governance and risk costs are a little bit higher, by about 44,000. The increased cost of our insurance premiums, obviously coming through, there's been an effect on that. Information technology is lower by about 100,000. This one's only time coming through. It's with the timing of our software license prepaid at the end of June 24. But overall, we're still tracking on budget. Government places is a big one there, which is higher than that, nearly $250 million. So the cost of the facility staffing is higher, and the use of agency staff as well has pushed those costs up due to the shortages of staff availability for the facility internally. Early learning and family daycare costs are higher by about 70,000, so it's increased staffing and childcare educator payments. So that's just to make the increase in our utilisations coming through. Branding costs are higher by about 74,000. That's under economic promotion. That's the branding project that we've got going in, which is reasonable. We will have an offsetter of that, so there will be a vote coming through because we're expecting an injection of 100,000 coming in for Ron Muscle Council to finalise that project. Real estate costs are higher by about 69,000, so we've had some additional utilities and land development costs, consultancy costs coming through. Scone sale yards is higher by about 97,000, so there's been additional costs for the operations plus higher than expected truck water charges. So that's one that we'll be going through and reviewing and seeing why that's actually jumped up above budget. So we'll be going through checking those out. Tourism and other all-based costs are lower by about 62,000. So we've had a reduction in our staffing hours at the hub and Woolworths and a vacancy in the tourism events coordinator's position for the first quarter. Waste operations expenditure is lower by about 182,000. So there's been lower than expected landfill operating costs and the timing of the state levy payments that we do pay. So we'll be looking at the timing in regards to that, but overall it's again within budgets. Council services lower by 48,000, just reduced cost because we had the local elections and there was a period of time where we didn't have any cost for elected members coming through. Plus also we had a little bit lower in some membership costs coming through as well, so that's a bit of a timing thing. Quality costs are higher by about 266. This one's one that is unexpected cost that does come in. We went through and crushed a lot of material at our quarry pits that we do have, so that being out of Elliston and also the Huon. So these costs will be recovered through internal quarry charges come back out of those pits. So and those quarry charges do go off to our roads and our major projects. So it's like a movement of that cash coming through.
Councillor Shields.
Oh, sorry.
Bridge maintenance is lower by 37,000, so we just have reduced maintenance today in regards to our council bridge network. Hopefully by the end of the year that will remain under budget because we've just gone through and replaced 14 timber bridges with concrete structures, so that hopefully will keep pretty low during the year. Local roads, admin and training costs. So this is an area where we'll go through and review because those costs are higher than budget in salaries and training activities for our outdoor staff today. So it's one that we're going through and having a look at. There's some costs in regards to the salaries where they need to be reallocated back out of it. So I've gone through and done an initial look at that. So we'll find the reason for that. Also the training side, we've done a fair bit of training in the first quarter coming through, and that ultimately will benefit our staff coming through with a lot of tickets and stuff. So overall, we'll be looking at our training activities for the back half of the financial year. Regional and local roads maintenance higher by about 400,000. Pretty well that we've got into our maintenance programs coming through and continuing that pretty heavily. And you'll see the next one down with the local roads flood damage is lower by 334. So it's slightly bit of an offsetter. So we plan to do a lot more flood work damage to that first quarter, but we've mainly done our main general maintenance to start off with until we get our schedules right to go on to the flood works damage. And that's fully grant funded, that flood works damage coming in. The RMS state road costs are lower by about 373,000. Again, this is in regards to a lot of our individual price works orders, which is more or less the works that we do on the Golden Highway that are requested by transport. So it's like our private works on the Golden Highway with transport. They're always a bit slow getting out the actual requests to us in the first part of the year, being a new budget year. And back end of the year, they push us pretty hard to actually get a lot of work done. So it's more of a time thing coming through. And we're anticipating a real lot of work to come, even though we haven't had any confirmation from transport, but there's been indications that there's a lot more than budget that we actually have in the budget to happen during the current financial year.
Just on that, Mr. Phelps, could we possibly discuss, and you've just made mention that this is an ongoing thing, that we do a lot of work in the back end of the year, and there is an expectation that we're going to be doing a lot of work. I assume that we've ramped up maintenance works in Merrywater in preparation for that, looking for a reduction in staff availability later on in the year. How do we manage those workloads?
Yeah, pretty well sits with the infrastructure services guys, but they have scheduled those in play. A lot of the works that will probably be undertaken would be around a lot of ceiling works, I would assume, which effectively are contracted driven, which we have project type management costs over, so we do cover up and beyond the actual cost of the actual seal itself. But overall, the guys out there will be looking at maintaining their maintenance schedules and what's needed for the whole year. Moving into the sewer admin, maintenance and treatment activities, they're high at the moment by 245, so it's been just an increase in maintenance and treatment activities experienced today. So again, it's a self-funded budget within the sewer fund, but we want to make sure we maintain it within the budget realms of both the water and sewer funds. So we're looking at why that has jumped up for that first quarter. And water supplies are high by about 99, so it's been increased maintenance and service treatment as well coming through. So overall, we've had a lot of work being done on our network for both water and sewer over the past probably 2 years. And that's mainly because of our networks becoming quite old. So there's been a lot of maintenance required to bring those through, and looking at renewal programs coming in to try and increase the lifespan of those networks as well. So overall, it's about $500,000 over budget at this point in time. Moving into our capital area, which is over budget by about 465, and this is where a few chunky numbers do come into play. So just going through the main items. So run by use and community service, it's lower at the moment by just over $250,000, just in the delay of the commencement of that. So we anticipate it to start in from July onwards, but we were waiting on the DA approval and which was delayed due to the council election. But it's now starting work from this week, so that should catch up pretty quick. Village Street pedestrian crossing, the streets, the lights over the actual pedestrian crossing in Maryborough. It's over budget at the moment by 83K. So it's a project that's been carried over from the 23-24 year, which we'll be looking at funding internally coming through. We have some restricted assets which we'll bring into play from underspends in last year. Plus also there's a movement of about 20,000 which we've allocated to street lighting in the current year. So we'll be creating a vote for that over the course of the next couple of months.
My understanding then, Mr. Phelps, 83,000 was the complete job, wasn't it?
During this chair, yeah, that's correct. Moving on to our off-leash dog area. So it's one that's jumped out of the ground. So we had an opportunity to acquire some land underneath the bypass from Transport New South Wales, which we've been struggling to find an off-leash dog area for the Scone area, because it was mainly down behind Gilbert's. So we've acquired that land for quite a reasonable price, and that would be transformed into an off-leash dog area there. White Park Complex, so the internal roads are about 43,000 at this point in time. So we've had to reconstruct a lot of the internal roads there, required for the patrons' accessibility throughout the facility. So we've had to undertake those works. Coulson's Creek Road, it's higher at the moment by about $500,000. Still within budget, still on schedule. It's just very chunky payments come through, so we're pretty well going to like $2.5 to $3 million every month in regards to it. It's just depending on weather conditions on how much work they actually get done within the months. So it'll be one that will continue to go up and down from the point of view of what works are completed, but still on schedule and within budget. Culvert flood betterment program, title like 110, we secured some additional funding through the betterment program, which will come through as some additional grant funding once we get some lenders attached to it all. So we'll bring that into play. Our rural road reshoot program is high by about 76,000. Continuing on, as one of those programs is a continual one that happens throughout the year. So more or less you'll have ups and downs as and when availability of staff are there to undertake works, and also the weather. It's very dependent on weather coming through as well. Our local road culvert subsidence is lower by about 100,000. There are no works that have been undertaken as yet. William Brook Road is lower by about 322. So delayed project carried over into the current year's works. So the works are continuing to remain on budget at this point in time. So we'll be continuing down that path of keeping ahead. Barrington Forest Road, it should be lower than budget by 334. With Moon Brook being pushed back. So these projects, Moon Brook, Barrington Forest, and Hunter Road are all connected projects coming through the mix. So though they're all being delivered as a package overall, even though they're different projects coming through in different funding streams. With Moon Brook being pushed back, you've had delays in Barrington Forest as well. And so ultimately they're remaining on budget, and we're hoping to do those within the current financial year, except they'll be probably 3 to 4 months later than we anticipated. So Aberdeen Public School, the upgrade works is higher by about 164. This is the additional funding we received coming through from transport. So that funding was secured for 152, so we have to find an extra $12,000 towards that project to finalise. Scone CBD works as well by about 95,000, so the project's continuing on schedule, expected to be completed by December, January, at this point in time, so that's working quite well. Main renewals, within the, water area, it's lower than budget by 48, the program's commenced and the works are continuing coming through. So the water UV chlorination project is higher by about 62, so its initial works started a little bit earlier than anticipated coming into the mix.
Can I just fall into that happens again, please, Mr. Phelps, on an infrastructure question, and we'll link this to finance. I noticed Seventy High Street on the Wombat Crossing, there's a lighting trailer at the crossing. What's are we complete with what we're doing, or we're looking for lighting further down the track, and do we need to be looking for grants for that lighting? What's the finance side of that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, but we're going through getting designs for the lighting, and we'll be looking at trying to get some funding to apply to that lighting coming through. And that's a discussion with transport.
Yeah, and in the meantime, that trailer is a requirement by transport, is it? And are we leasing that trailer, or is it one of ours? Or?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that it is a requirement to have that lighting over it. And we're anticipating to have that removed, hopefully by school holidays coming through. So we are listening to that, hiring that at this point.
Sure. Thank you.
Moving into the reservoir cleaning, so we've undertaken a bit of cleaning of our reservoirs. We've had a bit of inspection and required some clean, so that was an additional cost that will come through. So it wasn't in the original budget, so we'll have to find some money putting against it. The Aberdeen lift pump replacement also was a project that came through. It was an emergency replacement of a pump coming into the mix, so we needed to apply that there. So it'll be paid out of the water fund coming through. Glenbourne Dam pipeline replacement is high by 47, so its initial work started. It's about $500,000 job, and it started in advance of where we thought it was going to start. So we started the project earlier in the mix. The silver relining works at lower by about $248,000, just a delay in our works program to start off the financial year. So it obviously will catch up over the course of the year. So as you can see, there's a lot of timing with a lot of the projects that do come through, but we've maintained a lot of those on budget coming in the mix. And there'll be some there that we have to find a few dollars to apply against it, so we keep them in balance. So overall, it's a $1.1 million negative to balance the budget. The budget position, obviously, we haven't done any votes for this quarter. So once it's in full operations, then over the course of the next couple of months, we'll be looking at applying some votes, which we'll bring back to the committee coming into the mix. So the budget remains just a balanced budget. Bank funds and investment report. So included in the actual schedule attached to the report, there's 3 months worth of investment schedules. We're required to actually provide to the committee monthly the investment schedule, so more or less just says where we actually invested our funds coming through. We had total funds of just under $30 million at the end of September. 28 or just under $29 million was on investments, and that includes term deposits plus also our cash management account as well. It's an interest-bearing deposit. Our external loan schedule at the end of September, balance of that was just under $29 million. So that'll continue to come through, and it will continue to reduce as we don't have any loans to be drawn down. Internal loans. So at the end of June 24, we had a number of outstanding debtors from government, especially with a lot of our major projects coming through the mix where we have very large chunky milestone payments that do happen. We have about $11 million outstanding from governments. So our cash flow at the end of June, we applied and we then sought approval from the Office of Local Government to just move some money from the internal, the water and sewer fund, which is all internal within council, just to move that into the general fund, just to cover off the shortfall. And that was approved by the Office of Local Government. The end of September, we've knocked $2.5 million off that. We've received some of our debts that came in over the first quarter. We still have probably about $7 million outstanding at this point in time, which will come through over the course of the next 3 to 6 months. So that'll cover off that internal loan. So it's only a book entry within itself, within council money. We didn't go to an outside institution to obtain loan funding. It was all internally driven. Capital expenditure report, the end of September, we haven't made any movements on our $71 million, haven't revised it down at this point in time. Based on it, we've spent $14 million today to the end of September, which is about 20%. So we're about 5% behind being 25% of the way through the budget. So it's chugging on quite well. Again, it's a very chunky budget. A lot of costs for the CBD, the Moon End Brook, Barrington Forest roads, as well as MR 358. So it's a very chunky budget. Moving on to our KPIs on page 10. Here, there's just a summary of where we're sitting at this point in time with our KPIs. Early in the mix, we're meeting about 61% of the 33 KPIs coming through, which is about 22 of those. With regards to 2022 to about 20 actually coming through. So it's we have about 11 that are off target and 2 that we're in the monitoring stage, which is within a little probably 10% variance ratio. Overall, it's early in the mix. A lot of these we monitor on a monthly basis, and we take measures to actually bring them back into alignment to meet the KPIs. So if inspections are down in our Goodall area, we'll go out and make sure that we undertake a lot more inspections coming through.
Mr. Phelps, I know the last report, the last agenda for corporate services meeting indicated in memory there are only about 6 KPIs that were not being met. This is a market increase. Is there any concern about that market increase? And are there plans in place to bring these KPIs back in line?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Fraser. Through this GL sort of company. The KPI system we have is a fairly coarse tool. We set annual targets, and then we simply, in most instances, distribute those annual targets across the month. Now, we don't always achieve all the KPIs equally on every month, and we find at the beginning of the year, we're about, this instance, we're about 2/3 of the KPIs are on track and heading in the right direction. But because of some of the KPIs, now a good example is one of the ones in business services, which is $5 million economic uplift throughout the year. Well, that happens from the major events that happen predominantly throughout the year, like Horse Week here in Scone, Aberdeen Highland Games. So until we see those events, we don't see those large uplifts, but the KPIs are still distributed fairly equally across the months. We could go a lot more detail and do a lot more, I guess, forecasting as to which months we think we're going to see the actual increase and report on that. But at the moment, it's fairly close to
I could throw my thoughts in there. We've had quite a lot of discussions about KPIs and maybe overhauling what we've got. Maybe we set forward getting to the end of the financial year and perhaps look to workshop which might work with your internal processes as well. And, maybe we could, as a committee, to letting that play out to that timing, and then perhaps into the new financial year we look to workshop it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we would love some, spend some time with councillors looking at the KPIs with the new council. I think it's appropriate that we look at it. As you know, we had over 200 2 years ago, and reporting on 200 KPIs was almost, ludicrous. We're reporting down to the number of library books borrowed a month in some instances. So we tried to bring the KPIs back up to actual corporate indicators. Happy for individual units to measure some of those trends, but actually looking at KPIs at the moment, the 33 that we've got represent 3 for each of the 11 business units. Are they the right ones? This is probably the second year now that we're running with these current ones. We'd love some input from councillors and massage that appropriately.
To the General Manager, you talked about economic uplift from events. What do you actually mean by that, and how do we measure it?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shields. What I mean by that is that when we do something in the community, we spend money generally on an event, and we provide funding to the event organisers, or we undertake the event ourselves. What we see though is economic uplift in the community generally. So motels get booked out, pubs get lots of patronage, and shops get people visiting and spending money. We don't get that money as a council. That money goes back in the community. So we know that we've expended a fixed sum, but there's a mechanism to try and work out how has the community benefited from that spend. What benefit has the community received from that? Now, in order to calculate that, there's a number of models, and one of the models that we use it's like a tourism model. It takes into account the number of visitors you have. It works on some assumptions around how much visitors spend if they spend a day in town, how much they spend if they stay overnight, and it's a multiplying factor. We try to use that to the best of our ability. It's not an exact science. It does have some, variability to it, but it gives us an indicator of what is the community benefiting from certain events that we run.
General Manager, I know KPI 15 that approximately 90% of the future ratio is not being met at this stage. Is that a concern, and are steps being taken to correct that?
Yeah, so they're the financial focus. I'm going to probably throw that one back to Mr. Phelps, because we report on the financial ratios, and in fact they're all reported in the annual report as well. Once they're reported, even though we will report this KPI every quarter, they will in effect be that figure now for the next 12 months, because that is the annual audited figure. So that figure won't change despite what we do over the next 12 months. But do you want to talk about operating ratio and the couple that we did?
Yeah, yes, thank you, General Manager. Just through the chair. A lot of the ratios are driven for that for the future that came out probably 7 years ago now. And they're very arduous to actually achieve, especially with the operating performance, when we're coming through with depreciation levels that are actually in the mix. So we didn't meet that ratio, obviously, and also the unrestricted cash ratio, based on the fact that we are a little bit cash poor at the moment. That hasn't met its criteria as well. And the other one that we didn't meet was in regards to our own source revenue. So the actual indicator requires you to try and earn about 60% from own source, which means your rating, your user charges and so forth. When we get a lot of grant funding coming through, it makes it extremely difficult to meet that ratio, because it looks at your overall revenue streams for that year. So once we get into a situation where a lot of the capital grant funding is removed out of the mix, but then we'll be getting around that 60% mark. We're about 50 mid-50s in regards to our own source revenue at the moment.
Meeting the KPI in that circumstance, though, would be probably somewhat problematic for council because the reduction in the grant funding would not be of assistance. It would simply give an artificial increase to the ratio. So the KPI would not be particularly helpful. Would that be a reasonable characterisation?
Yeah, well, for own source revenue, councillor, my opinion is I'm not too concerned about not meeting it because it demonstrates that council is actually generating external revenue sources and not relying on ratepayers to foot the bill. So I think that's a good thing for the community and the ratepayers. For some of the other ones, like the operating ratio, while I would love to be able to meet that, but I think you explained in the induction day, very few regional councils meet that. And one of the biggest issues for us in the operating ratio is taking into account depreciation. And if depreciation wasn't included in that calculation, we'd be showing a positive operating ratio, but depreciation is included as part of the calculation methodology, and as a result gives us a negative operating ratio.
Thank you.
Okay, moving back into the report, on page 13, through to page 16, is pretty well the overview of where we sit with our funds themselves, being the general, water and the sewer fund, the three funds within council. And then it moves into the functions summary, which more or less gives you an overview of operating revenue based on service areas coming through, our non-operating revenue, our operating expenditure, non-operating expenditure, and our capital expenditure coming into the mix. So more or less just indicates where the dollars and cents are being spent on those service areas coming into the mix. So that's just a high level view of that. But also we have the request votes that do come in there to reduce the budget out to make a revised budget overall. On page 17 is our bank record and our actual our bank and investment balances, like graph coming through. As you can see, it moves pretty solidly all over the place as it comes throughout the year. Pretty well it drops away where we go through a lot of expenditure coming up to the end of June. Obviously with a lot of capital works, we try to push them out through as we can. Then there was a massive spike going back up the mix, that pushed up to where it ended up at the end of the year with financial assistance grants in advance, plus also received a lot of grant funding that we were waiting upon. And now you'll see that the spiral come back the other way. So it more or less is a lot of our capital expenditure happening as well. We received about $12 million towards Main 358 in that sort of like the April to May period. So that's why you get a massive big spike going up. And now we're actually spending that money on Main 358 coming through. So it is one of those ones with a lot of our major projects where it's very, very chunky. You'll see spikes that do happen coming through the mix.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, Elsie, on the next bit on National Australia Bank investment. $2 million at 1.4, how can that so low compared to others?
Through you, Mr. Chair. With that one, we invested it a while ago, and it was mainly around the COVID period where we were only getting 0.6%. And that was an opportunity to get a better rate at that point in time. The other problem was we didn't know how long the lag would be with interest rates, so we secured it in place. So as you can see, the term there is for 1,000 days.
Yeah.
So it was for a longer period of time. But as you can see now, all our investments are pretty well keeping around that 5% mark. We're only really putting on investments now for within 12 months. So we can just be a bit more mindful of the movement in the actual investment rates. So that moves into our next page, which is on 18 through to 20, which is pretty well our investment reports as they come through from July, August and September. September being where it finished the $28.8 million. And as you can see, it more or less gives you the investment house that we've got the money with, as well as the interest rate and the term and when it's due for maturity coming through. The annual yield out the side there, what we expect that investment to do on an annualised basis. So more or less gives you an idea of our revenue streams that are predicted to come forward. In the budget, our projections were very conservative in regards to interest rates because of the volatility that does happen with them. And we'll have some benefits coming through in the budget that will be higher than what we anticipated.
Speaking of the top of my head, I think it was about 700,000, wasn't it? So,
Yeah, through project, that's correct.
yeah, on the other side of that.
Yeah, so we took that very conservative approach based on the volatility in the market.
And, going to the next page, not getting running, but I will. We have the debt summary, with the annual interest payments, which councils will note as 974,224 interest payment per annum. Currently our annual yield from our investments is 1.295 per annum. So we're recovering that investment. So I know it's a hot topic here in the community. But and I do caution councillors because this is very chunky, but the investments obviously move rapidly. But for quite some time now, we've been receiving more yield from investments than we've been paying interest on loans. So there's quite a bit of misinformation in the community about our loan problem and our debt problem. It is worthwhile to note these numbers and recognise the nullifying effect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I suppose another caveat on that is why don't we pay out the loans coming through? We've actually we've looked at those sort of scenarios when we probably about 4 years ago, and unfortunately all our loans are fixed, so there's penalties on breaking in, so it wasn't viably attractive to do it. I mean, moving into then our summary on capital expenditure. So this is just to bring all the capital expenditure together. So just give you a summary.
Mr. Chair, sorry, just looking at that table on page 18 and looking at that that investment, with National Australia Bank at 1.4%. I don't have any problem with any of the numbers, but it was over 1,096 days. Now, when you do the number, yes, we do get $28,000 worth of interest from that. What happens to that interest? Because clearly it's not compounding.
That's paid to council.
Yeah, so they send us a check at the end of each year.
Yep.
And what do we do with that? We just put that back into general revenue, or?
That effectively is parts of our budget. So in our budget, we do have revenue from interest.
Yeah.
And that forms part of that revenue from interest.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
As I was mentioning before, the capital works expenditure, that's just a high level summary overall. And more or less indicates where the ups and downs are throughout our capital expenditure program coming through the mix. Again, we haven't had any those surrenders coming through, so there's been no movement in the revised budget or the original budget. And as you can see, we're about $460,000 overspent at this point in time. Moving into our KPI side of things, as we've quickly talked about earlier in the mix, more or less provides the 33 KPIs and which ones are on and which ones are off track. As you can see, you go down through those. The red ones obviously are the ones that are off and the greens are on. And when you get to the amber items, it is in a monitoring stage. So if you'd like to just have a quick look down there, any questions raised from any of those KPIs, we'll try to answer those for you.
I think my questions have already been answered in relation to those, like two previous questions I've asked in relation to KPIs.
Cool. There being any more questions or comments before we look to put this to a vote, councillors? None being forthcoming, I'll ask you, normally in the past, I've put all 6 through, for the notation as one vote, are we still happy, councillor group, to do that? That being the case, I remove it to another 6 items.
Move that way.
Councillor Colson, seconded. Councillor Shields, all those in favour?
No.
You guys have it. We'll move forward, Mr. Phelps, with the operational report, and I'm a bit conscious of time here, and we've got appointment at 10:30. So councillors are happy to refer to this part of the report and pose any questions or comments they might have. Are we happy with that board? Normally tease this out a little bit, but no, we have a short time frame today.
Mr. Chair, if councillors do discover they missed the vote and ask a question after we can still answer it afterwards. So.
Absolutely. I do have just one little question on fleet. On our fleet, charging there, also compliance on getting ours back to the finance committee, the finance department. How are we there? What's the process? Is it a paper-driven process, or we've got an electronic process where we account for hours and charging of equipment? And are we missing? We see it a lot that we're not getting full utilisation. Is there a problem with data?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. That's one area where we're actually reviewing at this point in time. Normally with a lot of our internal fleet, it happens through the timesheet process. So the guys fill out the timesheets and the girls in payroll process those into the mix. We're looking at,
we've got girls on roads and guys with pants.
we have payroll staff that process the information into the system, and effectively we looked at the last quarter of our utilisation with the hours. We do have reports we can get generated out of the system that has kilometres, hours and so forth. And we're reviewing those and looking at those against benchmarks at this point in time to see whether or not there is any gaps within our recording system. And then from that, we'll be going down further and asking further questions if the utilisation isn't there and they've been fully recorded, whether or not why for first instance, and whether or not whether that fleet is valid for that area. So we are actually looking at that review process at this point in time.
Any more questions and comments before I put this to a vote? Pretty happy for the mover?
So with that.
Second.
Councillor Shields moved, seconded Councillor Colson. All those in favour?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Move on to contractor and expense report. Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is pretty well predicated behind any contracts that we go into that are over $50,000 that we sign into being under the 250 tender threshold. So it's more or less to highlight any of those contracts that we do enter into, not purchase of materials and so forth, but it's actual service contracts that we enter into. And consultancy and legal costs to give the committee an overview of what we're spending on consultants and legals coming through, and pretty well a summary of what that consulting and legal costs represent coming into the mix that aren't fully defined, like effectively planning consulting fees are pretty well for planning out matters coming into the mix.
Got any questions or comments, councillors, on the contractor and expense report? None being forthcoming. I'll ask for a mover to note that the contract is listed for the period, and secondly, note that the consultancy and legal expenses report for the period. We've got a mover. Councillor Fraser, seconded.
Second.
Councillor Colson, I'm jumping in shortly. All those opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next item of business is the property update. Passing over to the general manager, please. If you keep going through.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Property update consists of sort of main two sections, councillors. The first is about our leased parcels of land or properties, and the second is about land development activities that we've been undertaking. The first part in regard to leases, out of the total of 37 leases, 36 are currently leased. The one that isn't leased, I believe, is the one of the shops in the Small, which is just going through the process of finding a new tenant. So we've got very good utilisation of leases with only one vacant at present. The addition we've added to this report, for those who are familiar with the old report, is the time series graph that we've now included, which just shows you the increase in the number of leases and the distribution graphically. So you can see that we've continued to increase the number of leases generally over time for the last 12 months or thereabouts, from mid to high 20s into the mid to high 30s. There's a list of leased properties, they're just for councillors' information, and then we move into the property progress, and I won't go through all of the detail, but the ones that are probably getting the most action at the moment are the two Hill Street properties. So the most recent action on that was to call expression of interest. We are negotiating with the purchaser on 98 Hill Street now in regard to the council resolution from July. Once that has been finalised, the next VOI for 97 being negotiated, 98 will then be put on the market. So we will report back to council once that sale has been finalised. It's still being negotiated at present. On our visit today around the Scone and Aberdeen areas, we will take you to Aberdeen Heights and we'll show you the proposed subdivision there. That is really still waiting on a potential funding source for us to undertake that piece of work. There's no further action on Maryville subdivision at this stage. Feasibility doesn't stack up to progress that at present, but we will continue to keep watching on that. There is a piece of work being done around Stone Street and DA feasibility in regard to potentially undertaking demolition work of the old house prior to doing anything further in that regard. The airport works, NDB towers have been removed, and as you would be aware, council approved the DA for the three structures, out of the airport. There's a further report coming to council next week on the actual contractual side of that. So one's the planning position, the next one's around the tender and the like. So we'll give you a much fuller report at that meeting in regard to the Bellman hangar, the leasable hangar and the workshop. Bunnan Road, we briefed you in June 2024, so just a few months we went through this council, of course, and there's no further action on that one at this stage, but that's the northwestern corner of the airport. We will provide you with a further update on that if and when we find something feasible for that particular site. There's no action on Barton Street at the present time. It really isn't a working site with the number of water mains through that, and we need to do significant work. We acquired that because of the impediment of the water mains on that property, but there is potential subdivision or development potential with the balance of the land. The one that's not in this report, but is subject to a report on its own, is the Murrurundi land, so I'll talk to that one when we get to that one. Happy to take questions on any of the leases or parcels of land that are listed in this report.
Just through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. General Manager, go back to the commercial land properties. Murrurundi Medical Centre, Murrurundi. Now, so the Scone medical practice is going up there. They're going to be working out of that Murrurundi.
That's
Great
correct.
news. Great news.
So that we have a lease at present with the current occupant, and that will just roll straight into the, so there's no, we won't actually lose any lease income through that as it goes transfers from one to the other operator.
Just on the Maryville subdivision, going forward, we're looking at expressions of interest around Nottingham. But we've got plans in place for expressions of interest out of Maryville, and what I'm conscious of there is what's going to happen shortly with all the res and a lot of infrastructure that's going through there, and knowing the speed at some of the processes at work, we need to be on that, and what's the program going?
The land at Maryville, Mr. Chair, is Collins Street. There's land at the very top of the hill. The cost of developing that has exceeded the cost of any sale income that we would likely get at this stage. However, that's part of the RES, which is the Renewable Energy Zone, of course. We are looking at land further down from Collins Street, possibly along Rifle Range Road, that could be used for makeshift, and that's probably the wrong word to use, but short-term temporary housing for workers' accommodation. However, whilst we've made that offer available, because it is fairly close to water, sewer, and it does have large tracts of land available there in town, most of the developers operating in and around the RES area have said they would rather their accommodation be close to site or in fact on the site that they're working. So whilst we've offered it up, it hasn't been taken away.
I think no further questions or comments, not a mover. Property, please. On with that, we've got a second that. Councillor Shields, all those in favour?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We'll move on to Rosedale subdivision. General Manager, with this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll maybe just touch on the highlights. I will assume that most of you have read and understood this. Council does own land at Murrurundi, and we commenced a subdivision in Rozelle Street a number of years ago. That land that was developed has all been sold now. Not all the parcels have had houses developed on them, most of them have, they're all privately owned. There was a council resolution at the time to only extend Rozelle Street for another 8 lots and not to do anything further to the east of that site. The Rosedale complex abuts the southern boundary, so there is a space where pony club and some of the equestrian events are held. We're not intending on impacting on any of that, but there is a portion immediately to the north of Rosedale complex, to the top of Doughboy Street, which at the moment has a subdivision master plan. It doesn't have a DA, but it does have a master plan. There's potentially about 100 to 113 lots, depending on how you allocate the lots. There's a drawing in councillor's business paper on page 130 showing that potential subdivision plan. At the time of this being considered by council back in 2017 and again in 2018, council decided it would only pursue those 8 lots immediately to the north of Rozelle Street. The reason being is that this parcel of land is used by the King of the Ranges for a cross-country equestrian event on an annual basis. there seems to be, obviously, the usage of this land could potentially have some community interest, so the potential of any future development, I guess, depending on council's appetite to pursuing that. We have had recently an offer to purchase that entire parcel of land. It's not a written offer, it's a verbal inquiry. And my advice to the person who made the offer was, at the moment, we do have a resolution that would prohibit us from selling that because it's currently sterilised in regard to the council resolution. And if we were to do anything, it would need to be on an open market so that we were not dealing with one particular interested party, but all interested parties having the opportunity to make an offer. However, before that happened, the council would need to consider whether it wishes to do anything with this land. It is, there is a gully running from the northwest to the southeast. You can see that green space on that diagram on page 130. That I guess identifies that environmental corridor. A couple of weeks ago, it was not wet underfoot, but potentially just soft underfoot. I don't believe the land has been used for any cross-country events recently. The grass was chest high at the time and it was difficult just to get through some of the sections. So obviously, there's a number of ways we could go about this. The council could continue on and just do those 8 lots itself immediately to the north of Roselle Street. It could sell those portions off as a single parcel and let the developer do that 8 lot development, or it could open it up to a broader, I guess, market and see if there was any interest in the remaining lots. But councils may wish to undertake further consultation with the community. It is operational land, you're not required to, you don't need to, but you may wish to do that if you chose to do so. So happy to take questions on that. I think as staff, we really need some direction as to what council wishes to do with this parcel of land going forward. If you want us to do more investigation, we will. But we've sort of pulled up stumps at this stage, knowing that this is a major hurdle before spending any time or effort going further.
Couple of things through, Mr. Chair. This has come up quite a few years since I've been on council. We've walked all that, we've looked at it all. I believe some of it is not suitable. We're talking about wetland. I think, yes, we certainly need to get, it's good to have this up and about, but we need to get back to the community, I believe, get back to the community, lay it on the table and make it clear, expression of interest, but nothing says it's going to happen. I mean, I certainly won't go for building houses on that wet stuff. We've already been there and looked at that. But there's potential here, but communication. That's my thoughts.
Councillor Fraser.
I have been contacted both by King of the Ranges and by the Murrumbidgee Pony Club who have expressed considerable concern in relation to this. They've reviewed the business papers for this meeting. King of the Ranges indicate that they are completely reliant upon the use of this paddock as well as Murrumbidgee Cantra, and the Pony Club also advise similarly that they are entirely reliant upon these grounds. I forwarded the Pony Club then on to you, General Manager, probably hasn't arrived yet. And I can forward on the email from King of the Ranges. I personally am not in favour of this because I think the community use outweighs any benefit from turning into housing. Otherwise, I join in what Mr. Mayor says in relation to community consultation. And if this isn't to be voted down at this stage, my proposal would be that the motion be amended to refer consideration of this matter to the Murrumbidgee Community Consultative Committee. So I am personally not in favour of this development or of taking any steps in relation to this matter, and believe that this land should remain as land used for King of the Ranges and as well as equestrian pursuits in Murrumbidgee.
Can I just comment, Mr. Chair? If I just take people's attention to page 130, which is on the screen, that you have in your business papers. The section that is coloured green, light green at the bottom of that image, that is the current known section that the equestrian users have access to now as part of the Rosedale complex. That will not be touched, so we won't be touching the space. That's the bit that I believe Pony Club use. King of the Ranges uses that extensively. The bit immediately to the north, where you can see the proposed lot layout, is the section where I can't see any evidence of usage being undertaken there in what I would say is some considerable time. It is long grass up to your chest height. So we're not proposing to impact on the current complex space. However, King of the Ranges have in the past used this further block up the hill for a cross-country event. So I guess we need to discern between the regular use of the sports complex for Pony Club and that, which is the bottom portion, and the irregular use for the King of the Ranges.
Yes, Chair, through you, with that diagram or that plan, where exactly is Rosella Road on that? Because I looked at this and I just could not see what we were actually talking about. There's plenty of other streets named. So where exactly?
Sure, through council, through Mr. Chair. You can see the red lots, you can see Mount Street to the far left of that screen on the western side of the diagram.
So they are the red lots are the original 8, are they?
So yeah, so it's Mount Street, immediately to the right of that, you've got red lots. Those red lots were the first stage, and Roselle Street is the street that services those. The construction of Roselle Street effectively ceases at the last lot on the northern end.
So it's the street that's marked there as road. I assume that's 20 metres wide.
Yes,
So
sorry.
that is
no
Roselle
names on
Street, is it?
that. Yeah, that's correct.
Right, okay.
Mr. Chair, just another comment. So this has been concerning for quite a few years. Can I suggest that when we do our tour, we do a good tour of that again to show the new councillors? And don't get too excited about anything at the moment. Just us go and have a look at new councillors and new councillors. Get your head around where it is. And I certainly agree, if there's long grass and they're not using it, what can we do to work together? But at this stage, let's go and have a look.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chair, that with Karen Court, Councillor Fraser's resolution, if you would you mind throwing that on the screen? Or if not, maybe Councillor Fraser can repeat it. But I think it's effectively undertake community consultation using the Community Advisory Committee as the means for that.
That's effectively it that we referred to the Barwon Community Committee for their input. But it could be broader than that council engage in broader community consultation.
I was just going to suggest, Mr. Chair, that there's probably, well, we haven't appointed the CAC yet, that'll happen in the November meeting. We could probably undertake broader community consultation, but still allow the CAC to have some consideration of the matter as well. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Can you express that way?
Just the council engaging in broader consultation.
Including broader community consultation, including I'd say in lawyerish terms included, but not limited to consultation with the Barwon Community Committee.
Yeah, this to go through as prior to going out with treasury interest.
I believe that's the intent.
That's intended. Yeah.
So just through you, Mr. Chair, I think we might just add to the bottom, the mayor's comment to the bottom of that. So Karen, after Barwon CAC, prior to calling any expressions of interest, or report it back to council prior to any. That way council has the process, a step in that process.
Okay.
And report back. report to council on the outcome of the consultation prior to but we can have potential, we're not looking at it.
The finance guy back with us.
So council, I realise that's sort of been a bit of a joint effort to get that resolution, but if councillor Fraser is still happy with the move,
Yes, I'm.
yeah, that's good. Thank you.
I'll second that, Mr Chair.
All right. So we've got a mover and a seconder. I'll keep my opinions to myself. But I agree. And if we could have a show of hands for the motion as written on the board. All those in favour, unanimous. Please, Karen. The motion will be that council engage in broader community consultation, including consultation with the Murrumbidgee Community Advisory Committee, and report back to council on the outcome of the consultation prior to calling a potential expression of interest. Everybody's happy with that, yeah. Okay, let's move on to the final part of the meeting today, which are the requests for donations.
Mr. Chair, we'll probably just take this as read. The last page of your report, page 137, shows a summary of the requests for donations we received, and there's been a payment, 3 of those have been successful. Unfortunately, a number of the unsuccessful ones are because they're raising funds on behalf of schools or charitable organisations, which, as you know, without policy excludes them. So that's the summary. Happy to take questions.
So for councillors, this comes out of this section 356. If you want to review the policy, if you want to look that up. I will make a comment here on the Scone District Preschool, their art show, which has already been. And they ran a very good art show. It was very profitable, and they had a lot of volunteer assistance there. But I will note that that's actually a not-for-profit and has no affiliation with the schools, so it is actually eligible within our charter. They are happy with the outcome because they had quite a good session. But we had a similar issue with Aberdeen Preschool, which is also a not-for-profit on another matter, and they were deemed not-for-profit and not a school, and they were charged accordingly. So we probably just want to make sure that we're consistent on our assessment of those preschools.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll have a look at those potential inconsistencies and correct it. Thank you.
Chair, just looking at the donations, the requests are made for looking at Scone Films Short Film Festival. They requested $1,500 and we gave them $400. What's the rationale to that?
Through Mr. Chair, our policy caps the donations at $400.
Correct.
So yeah, per annum, per group.
Right, thank you.
All right. No more questions on the mover. Mover, councillor Fraser, the second, councillor Shields, all those in favour. I think the ayes have it, and we'll call this meeting closed, please, Karen, at 10:24. Thank you all for attending.
Just have to solve what day in December we'll have the Court of Services meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. So we have the ordinary meeting on this at the 16th.
I think we're thinking on Wednesday, the other.
So
This
councillors,
is not suitable for me, unfortunately.
Councillor Fraser doesn't suit me.
we can change the days, it's just that early in the month, you may not have all the financials prepared in that.
We have a month behind, Wayne, you'll be right.
Tuesday, that to councillor Rosen.
Sorry, the 17th.
That's after.
Tuesday, yeah, that'll be the 7th, yeah.
No,
No.
the 10th suits me. But
Yeah.
the-
Same those
Yeah.
ordinance, industry construction,
It's just corporate services.
or, infrastructure,
So
environment.
10th, that's suit, 7th, 10th, that's suit.
any time on the 10th, fine.
So councillors, have all three committees on the same day, so we may just have to shuffle the times a little bit.
It's the big one too, Mr. Chair, isn't it? Big,
No.
big,
No, it'll only be the summary version, so if you start that at 9 o'clock.
that we could get through the same day.
Get through by 10:30, ready for.
I think as long as staff are happy that that's a reasonable, and that suits everybody else.
Yes.
So we'll lock that on into the 10th.
Very well.
We'll, yeah, it's
Anyway,
taken on. All right, we'll lock that into 9, thank you everybody, and I'll try to close the meeting again. 10:26, unless everybody else has anything else to add before we leave. Thank you all.